You're watching Balkan in Europe. I'm Borjan Јовановski. Macedonia is a captured state. That's how this Western Balkan country was defined in the last progress report of the European Commission. On Sunday, Macedonia is holding general election. Can we expect a free and fair electoral process in the state captured by one party? And what's next for Macedonia in the process of EU integration? We discuss in today's edition of our program Balkan in Europe with our guest, Tanja Fajon, member of Foreign Committee in the European Parliament, Mr. Tonino Picula, who is now Shadow Rapporteur for Macedonia in the European Parliament, and Fani Karanfilova-Panovska, Director of the Open Society Foundation in Skopje, Macedonia. Let's start with this definition of European Commission that Macedonia is a captured state. Madam Karanfilova, could you please explain to us how it looks like to live and work as a prominent person working in a civil society field? How it looks like to live and work in a captured state?
Well, a challenging question, a challenging reality. Being part of the civil society, being one of the foundations, local foundations that finance civil society, especially parts of the civil society which is a progressive one, which has been very vocal and very articulate in the last years, especially after the political crisis happened. It's challenging because we are in the focus of the pro-governmental media campaign attacking the progressive civil society forces because of having different opinion from what the mainstream governmental policies are. The civil society, I would like to underline that, showed to be a very important part of the whole society in Macedonia, has been very active, showed to have the capacity and credibility to contribute to the resolution of the political crisis, if it happens eventually, and was very active on the streets, but was also very active with its analysis, policies and research. Although the mainstream media and also the governing policies would love to keep it on the margins.
What are the response from the institutions when you have a problem, let's say, from various problems?
We have been now for years being blocked by the institutions in terms of gathering simple, free access to public information. So on the other side also, we have been also very much limited in our efforts to provide policy inputs on different policy issues which were relevant for our country and for which civil society has its expertise. So the dialogue between the governing institutions and the civil society is almost missing, non-existent.
Madam Fajon, Mr. Picula, everybody who is critical towards government in Macedonia has a name, Sorosoid. That's why we have invited director of the Soros herself. What's your experience from Croatia and Slovenia with NGOs, Soros Foundation, and all other, let's say, critical voices in your society? Do you remember that, and in the 90s, let's say, that they were treated as they are right now in Macedonia?
I am well aware of the situation. I had recently a chance to speak in Macedonia with civil society, and it's very worrying to hear to be so much limited, especially knowing that the civil society in Macedonia prepared a blueprint, like a basis, I would say almost a historical step, being really united to push the government with the reforms. In Slovenia, I don't remember that we had a similar situation in the past, but certainly there is an open way for the dialogue with the civil society. We always stress how important it is to have an engagement of NGOs, dialogue with citizens, because otherwise politics cannot work. Sooner or later, the hands of politicians are tied. But we never were in a similar situation than Macedonia is today, when we, in fact, this political crisis has lasted much too long, and these elections are the opportunity for the society to somehow move forward.
Mr. Picula, you have maybe some memories from the early 90s.
Yes, very vividly, I would like to say. Of course, we in Croatia, especially during the 90s, got not in a way same situation you are facing right now in Macedonia, but we got very similar situation. And my conclusion after being experienced with different stages of democracy in my own country, and I've been in many countries in transition during the last, let's say, 10 years as election observers. Before I served in Organization for European Security and Cooperation, and I visited many countries from Belarus to Middle Asia, including European countries. And if I may add that experience with my personal experience I gather in Croatia, my first conclusion is, after hearing from you, that in such a semi-democratic conditions, when civil society and opposition parties are facing difficulties with a ruling party or parties, that ruling parties and ruling regime is showing a self-confidence. And without proper manner to address main challenges of society, it in a way are starting with let's say, pressure or trying to minimize our own weaknesses and trying to find enemies somewhere else. But I think it's very important to strengthen democratic society with the pressure from not above, but from the grassroots incentives. And civil society plays an important role, but of course we're talking about a multi-party system, and opposition parties must be free to express their concerns, their voices, their programs. And we will see during and after these current elections, which will be held this Sunday in Macedonia, what is really quality of the Macedonian democracy?
So far, I mean, EU institutions were not efficient in allowing a proper democratic space in Macedonia for, let's say, fair play. What do you think, what EU institutions could do in order to improve? Having in mind lessons learned till now? Because somehow, and there are many critical voices saying that EU institutions fail somehow in Macedonia.
First of all, I think it's very much internal situation on one hand. I mean, at the end of the day, people go to the elections. Now we have at least minimum conditions for fair and free elections, which I do expect. It is in a way as well a test of maturity. But the EU also was quite engaged in ending this political crisis with Persian agreement, with pushing all the political actors in the party to really ensure the conditions for such elections. So now we are sending for the first time observation mission. My colleague Tonino is going there and other colleagues. I think this is also a very good sign. We are following, we are concerned what is happening. And we would like to see that Macedonia moves forward to the EU accession or on this way of the reforms. It was too long period that we lost the country. Nationalism is growing, brain drain is happening, economy is low. All these are consequences that the country is not functioning well.
Yeah, of course, I think the European Union in this moment can serve, not only in Macedonia, but we are talking about current situation in Macedonia, can serve twofold. First of all, as a goal. I think the motive to be part of the European family can be driving force in many processes within the countries. And if the citizens and political parties are really determined to become part of the European Union one day, they need to accept some kind of the standard of the behavior within the country. On the other hand, I think the European Union can serve in a different way. It can broker some kind of agreement. And during the last couple of years, we saw European Union being successful in, let's say, establishing relations, better relations between Belgrade and Pristina. In a way, we all remember all efforts European Union invested and still investing in enabling Pristina and Kosovo to cut proper deals to resolve and to settle these disputes. And at least Persian agreement is part of the good services providing from the Brussels. And I think the European Union is experienced enough in this moment to help Macedonia not only to meet democratic standards right now, but even more after the elections.
Madam Karafilova, what's your comment about the role of the EU institutions?
The European Union, and now I'm especially speaking about the European Commission, which actually provides the most important instrument when we as a civil society are the ones to keep something in our hands and advocate for improvements, which is the progress report. I would say that this year, maybe for the first time, the European Commission was very blunt in stating what's going on in Macedonia. Last year's progress report was also rather critical. But I think that since Macedonia got its recommendation to start up accession talks back in 2009, and since European Commission failed to use its conditionality over improving the democracy and the reforms in the country misused this situation and went on a wrong track. So I think European Commission and European Union overall could have done better for Macedonia if they have used the conditionality principle, also the EU funds, the IPA funds, which the country deserves, to make a stronger push and to prevent some of the backsliding in the democracy, but also in the implementation of the key reforms. Now we are in a situation to be maybe 10 years back and try to do the biggest impetus in order to get our country back on the right track.
Any comments? Yes, please.
I made just one comment. Thinking about IPA funds or the money that can be given to accession countries, it's always a dilemma whether you punish politicians or citizens. And this is always when we start the discussion. And I think it's better not to punish citizens. And the money is normally for the...
I completely agree. I completely agree, and it was a great move actually which the European Commission took, when the funds related to civil society were in question, which they take out from the decentralized mode, and the Brussels is the one to decide. That's was one of the events that showed that the European Commission is for the citizens in the country, because the biggest amount of DIPA funds go to the institutions.
Madam Fajon and Mr. Picula, just to go back to the definition of the European Commission, how do you understand the capture state as a diagnosis for Macedonia in the progress report?
Again, with this political crisis that we've experienced, especially in 2015, when people really went on the streets, we saw fights with the opposition, we saw inefficient or unfunctional institutions together with the parliament. And for many years, we had recommendations that Macedonia should start the accession negotiations, but there was a problem with Greece, and for many years, in fact, nothing happened, and country was just deteriorating on the accession path. That's why captured can be everything from economic, political crisis to the crisis or relations with the neighboring countries that in fact blocked the accession as such. So we don't have now at the moment clear recommendation.
The situation is worsening. Former Commissioner Fule said at 2014 Macedonia is in a deadlock, and now we are already captured state.
Yeah, it's some kind of the, let's say, rewarding of the situation, but unfortunately the situation remains the same for a couple of the years. And as we heard right now, the European Commission, for the first time, if I recall better, in its report sees no substantial progress in Macedonia in the course of the last year. And it's a pretty direct assessment of what's going on in a country. And you ask us, what does it mean, capture state? For me, of course, it's a multi-layer assessment. But first of all, I think that in such a country, institutions are not free from the political pressure. And I said institutions, I mean many institutions, not only state-owned institutions, agencies, ministries. It's also can be used to describe situation with the NGOs' state relations. On the other hand, the Commission also noticed that the country lacks substantial progress in fighting corruption. Of course, there has been certain progress being made in chasing low-level corruption among the low-level officials in the country, but almost nothing has been done in prosecuting high-level corruption. And the Commission is even more direct when it says that the State Committee for Preventing Corruption did not enough and prosecuting high-level corruption. So it's a multi-layered assessment.
Is there any consensus behind this definition of capture state, having in mind that the two foreign ministers of two member states were present in a party rally in Skopje, in the ruling party, the one which is suspected to be behind capture state?
It's always a little bit difficult to judge, to be
I'm very
frank,
sorry that
because
Mr. Kukan was not able to join us today. He's like member of EPP, but okay.
I at least can, my policy would always be when we try to help countries, we should help in a sincere way, with aim to help citizens and with cross-border efforts, because not making even deeper political divisions or lines, because if we want to move country forward, we have to go beyond. And as an institution, we are speaking here as two European parliamentarians, our role is that we approach like that towards Macedonia. That is an accession country. So I would wish to see also the Prime Minister depends on what roles they come to the country.
Mr. Pizzula would
of
like
course.
to...
It's basic problem, or if I may say in other words, that the European Union is an aggregation of the countries, and the European Union is not a common state, it's community of the states, and it's completely obvious that many respective member states got a different point of view when talking about different crises or situation in different parts of Europe. Migrant crisis or relations to Russia showed in the near past that it's very hard to achieve common view on many foreign policy issues in the Brussels. But when talked about the current visit of two foreign ministers in Macedonia during the last couple of the weeks, it's obvious that some countries got different interests. What I would like to see that some member states must be careful not to distort progress being made in Macedonia thanks to efforts invested from the European Union and European Parliament individuals and institutions. I think in some cases we should speak with one voice, especially when we need to describe a democratic standard or problems in the countries we would like all see tomorrow or day after tomorrow among us. And Macedonia is such a country.
The citizens in Macedonia, I mean, it's difficult to understand what's EU. I mean, we have a progress report which is backed by all member states in the Council of Ministers, but on the other hand, you see two foreign ministers with a completely different...
That's archipelago of institutions. You know, European Commission is in charge to defend and to promote common European interest. And individual member states very often got individual points of view.
Okay, what's next for Macedonia? Could we expect, first of all, the free and fair electoral process, having in mind that Macedonia is a capture state, if we still use this definition of the European Commission?
It is very challenging what we are expected to happen on the 11th of December, especially in terms of keeping the fairness and the credibility of the process, especially if we keep in mind all these reports that are coming from the civil society, especially I'm speaking about that ones, that are monitoring how the pre-electoral period and the political campaign went in the country, which shows lots of problems in terms of what needed to be done as a precondition of holding fair and credible elections, being it the voters list, being it the media freedom, or being it the separation between the party and the state. On all three lines, we have evident problems. We have problems with not perfectly cleaned up voters list. We have still citizens calling on our SOS lines saying that there are phantom voters on the voters list. Speaking about media, we have problems. Maybe the situation with the balanced information from different political parties has happened, but when you analyze the content and you see with this balanced in timing representation what means content-wise, then you see that these 5 minutes that are used for the reporting from what happened in the opposition meeting that are misused in another narrative to speak against the opposition this way or another. So content-wise analysis of the media, if somebody does that, will show something also which is not perfect, far from perfect. When speaking about separation or between party and the state, it's the most difficult part. And here is what we see currently, the biggest misuse by the governing institutions in putting pressure over the employees in the public administration to vote for ruling parties mostly, putting pressure to develop lists of other supporters for the ruling party, using public resources in terms of vehicles or other funds to for presenting the ruling parties in a better scenario. And I would say that that all this puts a lot of risks and opens lots of questions of how each of the actors in the electoral process will judge the elections after the electoral polls are closed on Sunday. So we'll see.
Mr. Pizzula, you are part of the European Parliament delegation who will monitor the electoral process at election day.
Yeah.
So what are your expectations, having in mind the all difficult circumstances that we have already mentioned?
According to my experience, of course, it's the first indication of elections we are talking about is electoral campaigning. And despite all the problems in previous period and the setting these elections in general terms, I've been heard that so far electoral campaign is going relatively well.
So far.
But we'll see. So far. We shall see, because many stakeholders in these elections, they are completely aware that political life will continue after polling station will be closed at Sunday in a way, and they need interlocutors from European side. So I think both ruling party and the main opposition party now try to behave their best to avoid accusation that they are distorting principles agreed in the Parisian agreement. But we will see the very couple of days after the elections what is the true situation with the democracy in Macedonia.
What do you expect, Madam Fajon? You have visited Macedonia recently.
I was especially alerted, it was mentioned partially, with the fact that a lot of people are afraid how to vote. They believe that their vote will be somehow monitored. So I wish to see a stronger campaign also from the government side, it's not only a civil sector, to make people understand that they should have their free and fair vote, and not to have the impression that employers are trying to push or blackmail their employees. This should be violated clearly. The minimum conditions are there, but then it's always, of course, necessary that all parties will accept the result, because implementing the reforms will need all political stakeholders. So it might happen that the situation afterwards will be even more difficult. So I expect that the campaign, of course, is dirty. It's, all the instruments are used. We know that the media freedom in Macedonia is at a very low level, so this has an effect on how the campaign is ongoing. But I do hope that people will have the chance for free and fair vote, and then the result, no matter for whom government or opposition, will actually respect it.
So
the first result of every elections our turnout. And we will see very soon in the Sunday evening how confident citizens of Macedonia is in democratic process.
And it seems it's still more than 30% of people undecided, which is quite a lot.
Yeah.
So the results are pretty much uncertain who will be the winner. But whoever is a winner, what's next for Macedonia in its path towards EU institution, in the process of the European integration?
Macedonia deserves a new government.
Could we expect a new
government
of this process?
Speaking
Because
new
Macedonia is
way,
a deadlock, as it was concluded by.
A new government that will deploy different way of governance, meaning that this new government, whomever will form that, must be committed to what the urgent reform priorities said. If we would like to really try to move forward and to draw progress in our internal building democratic institutions, employing rule of law, justice for everybody, protecting human rights as a precondition to move forward in the European integration. The commitment of the new government would be to include everybody in the process of designing the reforms that should start from the scratch, from the opposition to the civil society, because everybody has to become part of this process, which will be a new start-up reset of the country.
One of the key issues is the efficient work of the Special Prosecutor Office, as it was mentioned in the urgent priority reform that are precondition for the Macedonian European progress in the process of European integration. The ruling party has obvious animosity towards Special Prosecutor Office. If they win, work of SPO or the Special Prosecutor Office is in a way uncertain how they will perform and what will be the. So what are the challenges if the ruling party is a winner of this election?
It will be really challenging because...
Could we expect that they will change their attitude?
Yeah.
I mean, you are politicians, maybe you know how we act during the campaign, and that
No, of course.
if we change after the electoral campaign.
That's the reason why I said before that there will be a period after the elections. Of course, I completely agree that the elections are important not for the European Union, but much more for the Macedonia,
itself,
for the country. And I do hope that in the period to come, the governing party or coalition will first of all respect a couple of the main ingredients necessary to country be assessed as a full-fledged democracy. What is now, it's not the true. And one strong indicator where country will be directed is in relation to our Special Prosecutor Office. In many discussions here in European institutions, it's been clearly said that...
There is no dilemma.
There is no dilemma.
SPO should work properly.
Work properly, and mandate must be extended.
Yeah.
No, but the dilemma is that many of the people, members of the ruling party, are prosecuted by the Special Prosecutor Office.
Okay.
So, if they win, hypothetically.
So it's, but I can just say, as regards the EU and institutions, also the Parliament, we will strongly support the continuation of the role of Special Prosecutor, because its role is essential in view of defining the legal accountability of wiretapes. And in that regard, it's also necessary to prolong the mandate, because there were several delays, there are issues pending, and I think if you want to build a legal state or independent judiciary, also then I don't understand the arguments or the government or the opposition why such an institution maybe should not be even placed in a better, strengthened position and have a credible role.
And to conclude, because we have no more time, could we imagine Macedonia...
Can I just add on this shortly what
briefly,
Ms. Fayon said? If we don't have the legal accountability and we just resolve the political crisis by fair and credible elections, And if we don't have the legal accountability afterwards,
You
I'm
enter
afraid
into
we
new
won't have a state.
difficulties.
So I think this is the
Yeah.
legal accountability is even more important than
To
That
conclude
matters.
this
That
debate,
matters.
could we imagine this scenario in Macedonia, the government who will say, okay, EU, no thanks, we go our way?
Well,
It will be a very costly
Hey.
decision, completely
come
costly.
on, Macedonia is
I
part
don't
of
think so.
Europe.
Okay, but it's
It
just,
has-
Yeah.
just a,
It will be a
let's
costly
say,
decision.
provocation.
Who would wish to
And
leave?
I believe it serves only as a provocation and not guidelines for anyone.
And it's only it was used as an alibi so far to not to work on the reforms. I don't think that nobody really thinks of going somewhere else because
And that
we are
would be
too small.
it would be shooting to your own knee, I would say.
Yeah.
And I don't think that even two gentlemen, the foreign ministers who visited Macedonia recently, will back such a decision.
Okay, Madam Fajon, Madam Karafilova-Panovska, Mr. Picula, thank you for being guest in our program. Thank you for watching Balkan in Europe.